responders, and I learned so much about coronavirus. And one thing that's for certain, don't let it dominate you. Don't be afraid of it. You're going to beat it. We have the best medical equipment. We have the best medicines, all developed recently. And you're going to beat it. I didn't feel so good.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you today.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Good, and our president's out of that hospital.
Yeah.
It's good always to get out of hospitals.
No kidding.
You never
They're
want to stay there
dangerous.
very long. But how come just getting a little illness like he had? As a matter of fact, it turned out he wasn't really sick from the coronavirus, but it was still a very serious matter. I wonder why people get so upset when somebody gets better and it wasn't as sick as they were. People were actually upset.
Very upset.
And, you know, one of the things that did annoy me, and it takes a lot to really annoy me, but these people were saying, well, I wish you'd die.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a member of my family has received some of those type of things, you know. Why didn't he kill him and doing that? So, and you know, I think one question they ask a lot is, Rhonda, is it much different now than it was maybe when you went to Congress? And I certainly think there is a big difference. I think the ability to talk to the opposition was much better. Now things are very bad. I don't think anybody has a full explanation on that. The people are maybe less moralistic, but they also might be reflecting the stalemate we have here with the finances. We're all broke, and it's also a vicious power struggle. But you know, that is really a sad story when they can come out so viciously. But this whole thing that Trump said, you know, I sort of like that.
Yeah.
You know, and he said, don't be afraid. Don't let it dominate your life. Well, you know, balance is a good idea. Domination, I mean, in some ways there are some viewpoints and some profound beliefs that I have that sort of dominates my inner soul.
Yeah.
but this is, I think, good advice because there is this domination, and of course that's what Trump is being harassed about, you know, constantly, because the other side is, you know, really out to get him. So this is. I think he said that with a little bit of feeling too.
Yeah.
But I think there has to be some balance on that because what he always gets hit with, he doesn't care. It's only we who care, and we're the ones who protect the people and protect, you know, general welfare for society and work for the common cause. And those are the lefties that do this. But you know, I suspect, and you may share this idea or this feeling, I suspect that this emotional concern about the people is a little bit overblown.
Yeah.
I think it's, you know, fake, if you want to say. I think it's all fake because from my viewpoint over the years, what I've seen the strategy behind, and more so in the last 3 or 4 years than ever before, when you consider that the election, although in November 16 was supposed to be over, it was just beginning, you know, and all this stuff. And to me, it was power. Looking for power. And I think that's where some of these confused signals come. And it's been a fight over the coronavirus. And people want to, if you don't have exactly the right answer for the media, you're a bad guy. And if you say that, well, this is all about power and authority, then you don't care. You don't care about sick people. So it's on and on. There's so little honesty about admitting, you know, the situation where we are and what we ought to do. Because if you know, we did have some friends in Washington, and there were some honest progressives that we could talk with, you know, and have our disagreements and actually co-sponsor legislation when it came to important issues of war and peace. But there's less of that all the time now. But this is still an interesting subject because it's not going away. This is sort of on a deadline. What's Trump going to do with his time, and how are they going to bash him? Is he good? What if they're able to engineer some terrible thing to say, well, he can't be in the debate or something like that? they've already started that. You can't imagine him exposing everybody to his spreading of the disease. But I think Trump will probably figure it out, to tell you the truth.
It was amazing to see. They were literally furious with him for not dying. How dare you not die of this, you know? How dare you not play into our narrative? But that's what he did. In that moment where he ascended the stairs and he looked out over there was a lot of press down there. They were a long way away, and he took off his mask. It was an incredible moment. I think he was sending a very clear signal at that point. And then he gave the comment where he said, don't let it dominate your life. Don't be afraid. And what he was saying, I think, don't be afraid because fear makes you do stupid things. It's not saying don't be concerned about the virus because he's been there, he's done that, and he's felt what it feels like. But he's saying don't let fear dominate your lives because it makes you do bad things and dumb things like put on a mask when you don't need it, like Biden did in Grand Rapids the other night where there was no one anywhere near him and he was outside. He did that virtue signaling. But it was a powerful moment, I think, because it undermined the political aspect of the coronavirus. Not the disease aspect, because he was there. He's been there. He was treated for it. But the political, he basically unmasked not only himself, but he unmasked the political plot against him.
And there was a lefty, the name fails me at the moment, a lefty who said, his Mussolini moment.
His Mussolini moment, yeah.
Isn't that horrible, you know? But that's the way politics are being run now. But we've had some people follow up. You know, I was watching Fox last night. It was interesting. Fox had a program last night. It was touched on the very subjects that we did. So, and they've been doing a better job, I think, on handling you know this whole issue. But you know, we saw the doctor that we talked about yesterday, who wrote another article on this, Martin Kollendorf, who's
Harvard,
professor at Harvard University. And it's you know, it might not be every word that we would write, but it's the spirit of what he talks about and the challenges he has and what he's up against. You know, medicine is as political as any other group. You know, especially if you're in university medicine.
Yeah.
You know, it's the university system, so you still have to be politically correct. So the various doctors that joined, the two other doctors that joined him yesterday, deserve a lot of credit for speaking out, because they have credibility, you know, and they aren't somebody that's just started talking about this. But we need more like that. And Jonathan Turley, our friend Jonathan, you know, he's doing more public writing, and he certainly doesn't like what's going on with this. He's been coming across very well, and his critique, which is what we're looking for, is sort of an approach. Most people think that we only have exactly one position which is extreme, and in some ways the principle should be clear. I think the issue of risk is very important. The individual should make the decision in medicine and everything else. But still, again, there's time about how do you deal with it, because government is so involved. You say, well, yes, private schools handled this better than, and homeschoolers handled it quite well. But what happens if 85% or more kids are in government schools? Then you can't say, well, I know a better way. If they were all private, we'd have our answers, which is true, but we don't have it that way. So therefore, we have to make comments. What should these rules be? And there's two choices you have: make it terrible and ornery and ruin the kids, or right now move in the direction of letting local people make decisions and have it where there's more choices in the matter. And there is some movement in that direction, but not enough. We need to, because the statistics are now showing, you know, that the danger of somebody going to school, a kid, you know, 16 and under, and if they go to school, the odds of him getting coronavirus and dying, pretty darn slim. And yet just think of the hysteria and the damage. Some of the teachers are really, you know, very concerned about what's going to happen to this generation of students that are putting up with it. They're the victims right now.
Yeah, and back to Dr. Koldorf, he did a piece, as you say, in the Spectator, the UK Spectator. Great article, And he says the unmentionable thing, which is that herd immunity is still key in the fight against COVID-19. That was the title of the piece. I think it came out today or yesterday. But this short paragraph bears repeating. This is a professor and a doctor of epidemiology. He's a specialist in pandemics. He's a specialist in infectious disease. And here's what he said. The pandemic will not be over until we reach herd immunity, either through a vaccine or through natural infections. Herd immunity is not a strategy, but a proven scientific phenomenon. And to deny this is as silly as denying gravity. With the right strategy, we can even use it to save lives. And he goes on to outline exactly what should have been done from the beginning, which instead of putting everyone in the same camp with the same vulnerabilities, should have been smart. And young people actually getting it and getting over it speeds up herd immunity, because the virus then can't get into other people because they've already had it and gotten their immunities from it, and that protects older people. So instead of doing that, they did the opposite. They kept the kids inside so that the older folks and the sicker people could get it and die.
Another message I got from his article was avoid exaggeration, and probably both sides have a temptation to do that, but the ones who want the lockdown, they exaggerate and make it sound a lot worse. And on the other side, don't dismiss the seriousness of it. People get sick and people can die from it. But if it's exaggerated, then people, get intimidated, get scared and fearful. And I think that's why Trump touched a nerve there. It'll be interesting to see how that settles, whether the American people will be sympathetic to somebody coming up with a better statement than trying to say, well, if you go to Fauci, what do you think, Dr. Fauci? Well, we need to have another lockdown, When are we going to do this? Because, influenza is coming, and now that we know how to handle this, we'll be able to apply that to influenza. And that's, we should be concerned about that.
The next danger. Well, the mainstream media, their heads exploded when Trump did this. Chris Cuomo, who I think is really seriously deranged, I think he seriously needs psychiatric help. He was on the screen, and I can't even say what he said even on the public airways, but here's what he said as Trump came out and took off his mask. There he is, hair blown majestically, reshooting the scene for his own ad. What a bunch of BS, but he said the word. And just propaganda. He was just seething with hatred. But the New York Post, which is a pretty good newspaper in many ways, they slammed him. They nailed him, as did a lot of Twitter people, for his own hypocrisy. Because back in April, remember, he made a big show about, I've got COVID, I'm going in my basement. And he made a big show just a couple of days later of coming out of his basement. But while he was supposedly in quarantine, he got caught outside without a mask on, getting in a fight with someone riding a bicycle that he didn't like. So the guy himself is an absolute hypocrite and having an absolute conniption fit. Jennifer Rubin, who's a fanatical neocon, she was tweeting last night that Walter Reed Medical Center should be defunded, forget the police, defund the hospital, and every doctor who treated him should be fired, because you're not allowed to let someone leave just because they got healthy and because the medicines work. So it really was amazing to see this. And actually, let's put up that picture, that next picture if you can, because this is the New York Post. Cuomo ripped over hypocrisy of mocking Trump. Here's Cuomo himself coming up. Let's do the next one really quick, because Dr. Paul mentioned Fauci. Fauci is disappointed too. He wanted Trump to get a lot sicker, but he's warning. Fauci warned that Trump's COVID-19 recovery could soon go into reversal. I mean, he just can't stand not being paid attention to.
Guess we better get back to worrying,
Yeah.
Better stick with that. There was another article, Heather McDonald, that wrote about this, and she was using a term that I thought was very descriptive. It was safetyism mentality.
Yeah.
And it is almost like an obsession with safety. And I've used that a lot because others have pointed out that if we have a government that is designed to make us safe, in all regards, whether it's economic safety or medical safety, personal safety, and everything's turned over to the government, there's no liberty left, and there are ways that you can be safe, and it's provided in the Constitution, and it's also provided by individuals who are responsible for their own acts. And sometimes, I think it was she that talked about virtue signaling, this whole thing, and you sort of touched on it there. They didn't have their mask on, and that was a signal, but what about the ones that grab it and put it up and pretend they're holy, and they have to send that signal, and that is what makes Trump make people so angry at Trump. He's willing to actually at the beginning that I think helped him was the willingness to challenge political correctness.
Yeah.
This is a little more than political correctness because they can throw it in. We're talking about sickness and all, but it is a form of political correctness. And if people, even under these circumstances, where they wear the mask has nothing to do with safety. They're out walking in the woods, and they'll be wearing a mask. So it is a signal that they are better people than the others. And people who challenge it, oh yeah, you're like Donald Trump, you don't really care, and then they throw everything at them. But I still think that Trump's statement is worth thinking about. That we don't have to do this, be so fearful,
Yeah, and it's McDonald in her piece, by the way, we have it on ronpaulinstitute.org website. We have her piece up, an excerpt of her piece up for people who are interested in it. But she makes some very good points. She points out that, we could set the highway speed limit to 15 miles an hour, but people simply aren't willing to bear that. They're willing to bear some risk. Yeah, there's some risk that they're willing to bear because, 100 people a day die in automobile accidents in the United States. That's a lot of people. We're willing to bear that risk to go. And she said, yeah, likewise, you could literally lock everyone in their house in a cubicle, and air-contained cubicle, and somehow maybe prevent the spread. But people should be allowed to gauge their own risk in their own behavior in doing what they need to do to live, to survive.
Yeah, and this is the whole thing. Every day, all of us make those type of decisions. Should I walk out the door? Should I get in the car? How fast I'm going to go? Everybody's making their own personal decision. But when it's turned over to the government, it becomes bureaucratic and nonsensical, and can't solve all the problems because risks are there. And then that invites people, if they accept this idea, well, that is true. That's why we need government. Government is supposed to make us safe. But I don't think it's in the Constitution that the purpose of the national government is to make us safe and secure, and that the government will take care of us for our every need. Matter of fact, that destroys liberty, and it creates dependency. And that's where we are today, total dependency. And after we exhaust our resources, which I believe we have, and that's why I think we're in a financial bankruptcy, that there's nothing else the government can offer. Before, when they were using up these resources, they had something to bargain with. But since governments have nothing, and they're still pretending they have resources, what they have to do is, create it, steal them, create it out of thin air, borrow it, or whatever. But I think that is one of the major reasons that any issue like this gets blown out of proportion because we have accepted this principle that government is in charge, they write the rules, and they will do better. And so few people really want to talk about the downside, of the lockdown. More so now than before, but it's always after the fact. But I think that's what will finally wake up the people. The bankruptcy, government can't create. Let us alone, leave us alone, and we'll take care of ourselves. And that's, I think, hopefully we've turned a corner and we're going in that direction.
It does make you wonder about the mainstream media, how they in unison reacted in such a hysterical way. And here's a clip. Everyone was sharing this on Twitter earlier today. This is an actual front page of the CNN website. If we can show that next one up. It's unbelievable. I think they counted, if we have that next clip. No. Go back, please. Yes, here it is. CNN. This is their front page. Trump makes bizarre White House return. How bizarre is it? You go to the hospital, they give you some medicine, you get better, and you go home. That's bizarre. How dare he do this? And it's just incredible. I think they counted some 20 or so references to Trump on their front page. White House reporters are furious with the White House for having endangered their lives. There's a famous clip here, Dr. Paul, by the way, of this one woman, I think she works for CNN. She's the most hectoring of all of them. How terrible you're not wearing your mask. There's a clip of her. As soon as the White House press conference is over, she looks around, she rips off her mask. She doesn't know that the cameras are still on. Many of them are like this. So it really is incredible how they've lost their minds. I would just say two more things, and then I'll close later. But I think two important things happen. First of all, Trump, by this symbolic action, and Turley makes reference to you have nothing to fear but fear itself, which is an interesting parallel. I don't want to get too into it, but he destroyed the political narrative around COVID. He recognized and destroyed the political narrative by ripping off his mask, showing it, exposing it as this is just the next chapter in Russiagate. At the same time, simultaneously, we've talked about it, Laura Ingraham talked about it last night, and others there are a new group of very, very well-qualified doctors that are emerging that are not kooks. They're at very prestigious universities, and they're coming forth and they're showing a more rational approach to the disease part. There's the political part and there's the disease part. And now both of them are being treated in a better way. And I hate to sound so positive and optimistic, but I think those are two very important developments.
I think they're going in the right direction, and I hope we can continue to contribute to that movement. People come up with some common sense. But it has to start with people being reasonable in their own actions and willing to actually talk to people. That's what happens. They're closed-minded. When you think of the Cuomos of the world, I think of them as having a lock on their minds. They're locked down. They get locked down. They don't want to hear anything else. They're absolutists that they know the answer, and that authoritarianism is the answer. The evil is people making up their own minds about what they want to do with their own life, and of course, they just don't understand how anybody could accept the Constitution because they were off track, and the Constitution isn't relevant anymore. That's why they don't believe in it. Oh, the words say that, but that's been disposed of a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, I'll close with a couple of final ideas just on the sort of general idea of what's been happening. First of all, if we can go to that clip about colleges, and I think it was right after the one with CNN. This is really fascinating article, and I think we'll put it in the description. It's worth looking at. As you know, Dr. Paul, in American universities, they're testing millions and millions of kids. I mean, they're going crazy testing them. Morning, noon, and night, test. So this is the result as of October 5th, at 50 American universities, testing since August, they have found 70,000 positive tests. 70,000 of these kids have gotten COVID. Oh my gosh, they got to shut the university. Guess what? There have been 3 total hospitalizations and 0 deaths. That is unbelievable, and it's amazing that they get away with shutting the schools down when clearly these young people are not vulnerable to this disease. And let's do the final one. This is a tweet that I want to put up. And I tell you, there's one person in this country, there are a few people, but there's one right now who should be hiding his face in shame, and that is our own Governor Greg Abbott. Now, he has destroyed the bar industry by saying, hey, if you have a burger with your beer, that's fine. If you just have a beer, you're going to go to jail. And here he is tweeting today, Texans have continued to keep COVID under control. Hospitalizations, number of new positive cases, and positivity rate remain contained. Today was the lowest fatality in a long time. I will be announcing more openings soon. Okay, King Abbott. And here, this disgusting, talk about horrible optics. He's showing 2 people clinking beer glasses. No, they're not going to clink beer glasses anymore in Texas because you destroyed the bar industry by closing them for no reason.
Sad story. Sad story. I wanted to add up one more statistic about the college kids in California State University. They tested 37,000 tests, and they found five people. So that's what's produced. And that's back to this whole thing we've talked about for weeks, and that is the statistics that they get out, the data. It's fictitious, doesn't have any real meaning. And every night you see on the air, well, 218,000 people died from this. And you could dissect that out, and everybody would assume that some individual along the way, no matter what their age was, they got the virus, they got very sick, and they died, and there was no other variables. Well, we know that isn't true. We know that all deaths are tragic, and people have to be cautious, but there's so much distortion. In order to promote their agenda, the agenda of those who promote lockdown and all these efforts is to secure more political power, because that's what they're there for. They don't know what to do. Are they running a corporation and producing good jobs or doing something? No, they're there for political power, and that's what they live and die for. Of course, there's a lot of people who suffer for it, and it's the average person. You know, it always bothers me when somebody in the government says, you know what we need to do is the government needs to pay for this. I need the government to do this. And they never follow up and say, well, how are you going to do that? You know, we have a lot of debt. There's no money there. And most of the time, I noticed that when these Marxists that are now in the Congress, they get asked that question, they just totally ignore it because obviously there was no answer. But the truth is when there's a promise made by a politician to give something to, a potential voter, what they do is they say under their breath, we'll have no problem, because they have a little tool called theft. And that's what the government does. The government steals. And don't steal. The government doesn't like the competition, so you have to watch out. So they do this, and they literally have to steal money from one group who's productive and never broke a law in order to give to somebody for various reasons. Sometimes they're good reason. But because some people are in need, they don't have this justification to steal from people. But they do know that, yes, they know people who are in need and sick and have problems. They know they can't go into somebody's house and steal. But morally, they see no difference. They see no problem with sending their friendly politician into somebody's house and threatening and intimidating and take what they need to pass it out and get reelected. And they say, oh, no, that isn't the way it is. Government is set up to take care of people. It's a common need for people, and that is their responsibility. Well, that's true in an authoritarian government that usually gets more authoritarian as time goes on, and that's what we're suffering from. But no, there's other ways to do it. If you want real prosperity, if you want a huge middle class, and you want more peace and prosperity, you reject the notion that it's the government, the bureaucrats, and the politicians and the special interests' job of pretending that they're going to make everybody happy and fat and free. Now, it doesn't work. So I say that we should continue to state the case for liberty and get more people to join us and send the messages to the politicians that we don't need you to take care of us. We need our own freedom so that we can take care of ourselves. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.